All right, so now let's get SonarLint installed into our Eclipse environment here. We're going to go back to Help and Eclipse Market Space. And it'll take just a second. We'll search for SonarLint, and there is only one plugin there. We'll go ahead and install that. Accept the terms. And we're going to restart. And again, you can install all three of these things if you're going to use all three, and do it all at one time, restart. It'll save you a couple of minutes. So this is really just for demonstration purposes that we're doing this one at a time. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually just going to right click. This one's an easy one. There's not really any configuration we're going to do. We're just going to analyze. Here we go. And here's our SonarLint report. So we're right into the report. Again, with Eclipse, you also have the ability to point your workspace to a Sonar Cube or Sonar Cloud project. So if you're creating a custom quality profile and you want to override anything in there, you want to override the tabs versus spaces rules, you can do that. And we're going to talk about that later in the lesson, how to get that all set up. So that your Eclipse workspace points to your Sonar Cube or Sonar Cloud profiles, and that way all your developers are using exactly the same rules every time they run this analysis and before they commit their code. So we'll start up here at the top, like we did with the IntelliJ version of this lesson. We're going to start out. All right, we'll resolve that we should be catching an exception instead of throwable. This one up here, this is always resolving to false, or always evaluating to false. So we're just going to take that out like we decided to do before. This string constructor right here, I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And you notice in IntelliJ, we actually fixed this one in the find bugs as opposed to with the SonarLint. So you can see the differences, the subtle differences between the plugins, between Eclipse and between IntelliJ. But we're still getting everything. We're still getting good coverage if we're using all three of these tools, all three of these plugins in our workspaces, in our development environments. Then we're still catching everything that we need to catch there. All right, we're going to replace this. This is where it's getting into telling us to log these things instead of putting them to the console. Let's go ahead and, like we did before, let's clean up our complex statements here, because this is going to take care of a few of these issues. Again, this code is really useless. It's not doing anything productive. It's never actually going to execute because we're setting our value up here to 0. And then we're ultimately checking to see if it's equal to 4. So that's not going to help us out a whole lot at all. But again, it's not really about useful code. It's just about demonstrating the rules that we're following here. Okay. And now we've got this stuff down. We've got this uncommented code. It's telling us to do something about that. All right, and then let's just go back and just run. Let's just analyze again, because this should bring down. Yeah, so now we're just down to the loggers, right? And we can get that resolved pretty easily. And so what we'll do is we'll come up here and we're going to do a private static final logger. So we got that. And Eclipse helps us out up here by importing automatically. And then we're going to go through here, and like we did with the IntelliJ, we're going to log. Okay, and we see that one drop off. And then we really can kind of do the exact same thing with each one of these system out statements. So we can just clean up our code, get it to where we want it to be, and watch these issues drop off one at a time as we do all these things. And it doesn't take that long. So when we get into the SonarCube dashboards and we look at this stuff, it's going to estimate about how long it's going to take us to get our code to where we want it to be. And those estimates, sometimes I think are probably pretty high. Sometimes maybe not. But sometimes I think they're probably pretty high. Because as you can see, we're able to clean these things up relatively quickly once we get into it. And I'm going to do an e.get stack trace right there. We should be good. All right. And I've got build automatically set up here. So I can just go run my code, go over my console, and I'm not really getting anything coming out because it's all going into the logger, but that's okay. But we can see over here from our problems, all of this stuff is just down to check style problems. These are the exact same ones that we had before. You can see a few more of these, lines are longer than 80 characters. First sentence should end with a period. So it's going to be really kind of picky about what we're adding in here. Some trailing spaces in here. Wants us to clean those up. Doesn't like those. All right, and then we're really kind of down with left with what we had when we finished up our lesson on check style. So that's our SonarLint plugin for the Eclipse workspace, for the Eclipse development environment. We've got everything cleaned up now, nice and clean code. As you can tell, this is the same code that we ended up with at the end of the 3 lessons that we did on IntelliJ. We've just done this all with Eclipse. Just another quick thing to point out, Eclipse does also have these left gutter items here, this left gutter that shows you the bugs and the problems and the issues. So it's got all this stuff in there. Check lint, find bugs, SonarLint, those will all show up in there so that you can work that way if that's your preferred method of working. You've got tabs for each one of the plugins where you have your SonarLint, you have your check style violations, you have your find bugs explorer, but then you have a consolidated problems that will show everything going on. So if we were to go put our code back, so let me do this. I'm just going to copy this code and stick it over somewhere else out of sight. Copy the old code and drop it in there. Going to save it. And see, this is then going to come back, and I've got SonarLint. See, I have check style, I have SonarLint, and if I were to come in and run find bugs again, it's going to show me everything in there, right? So SonarLint on the fly, find bugs problems, check style problems, everything's all in one place, which is kind of a cool feature within Eclipse because I can just start at the top and I can work through it, I can clean everything up. I've got all my indicators over here, and so that's really a handy way to within Eclipse to get everything cleaned up and get your code looking good. All right, cool. So that takes care of it. Hope you enjoyed this section, and the next section is going to be we're going to focus on how to get Sonar Cloud set up and running so that we have one centralized location for all of our analysis.